Coach LeBron, you are 100% right. Y'all girls, stop being petty. Caitlin Clark, thank you for bringing all that money and shine to the WNBA.
Charles Barkley has never been one to mince words. The former NBA star turned outspoken analyst has built his second career on bold opinions and unapologetic takes. When he gets fired up, it's more like a show than a simple critique, and during one segment, he set his sights on none other than A'ja Wilson. Why? It was all in the aftermath of Caitlin Clark's unforgettable triumph on the court. What followed was classic Barkley, a mix of sharp commentary, tough love, and a few jabs that left everyone talking. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Caitlin Clark, the rising star of women's college basketball, had just delivered one of the most electric performances the sport had ever seen. Her sharp shooting, court vision, and almost fearless demeanor put her in the spotlight. It was the kind of night that cemented a player's status and carved their name into basketball history. A'ja Wilson, however, didn't seem to respond as many would have expected. For Barkley, this was a golden opportunity, not only to highlight Clark's brilliance, but to take Wilson down a peg, in a way only he can. Barkley isn't one to quietly let things slide. So when the topic of Wilson came up after Clark's triumph, he didn't hold back. In typical Charles fashion, he went for it. He questioned Wilson's drive, her presence on the court, and even her leadership skills. To Barkley, it wasn't just about one game or one performance. It was about something deeper, the mentality that separates the good from the great. And in that moment, Barkley felt that Wilson wasn't showing enough of what he deemed necessary to truly stand out. There's a rhythm to the way Barkley delivers his critiques. It's almost like he's performing stand-up comedy, but with basketball analysis instead of punchlines. He'll start with a comment that seems reasonable enough, but he can feel the build-up coming. That's what happened here. He began by praising Clark, saying she had the killer instinct and the ability to take over games. Then, in a sudden shift, Barkley turned his attention to Wilson, saying she lacked that same spark. He kept it real, as he always does, but he was cutting. And it wasn't just about her game. Barkley called into question her ability to rise to the occasion when the spotlight was brightest. For Wilson, a WNBA MVP and one of the most dominant forces in the league, Barkley's words cut deeper than the usual criticism. Here's a player who's used to dominating and hearing applause, not critiques from a Hall of Famer on national television. But Barkley wasn't concerned about sparing feelings. His take was raw, and that's what made it so captivating. It wasn't just a critique of Wilson's game that night, it was a full-on assessment of where he felt she stood in the pecking order of basketball's elite. What made Barkley's tirade even more entertaining was the subtle way he injected humor into it. He wasn't just being harsh for the sake of it, he was performing. He joked about Wilson's reaction on the court, mimicking her expressions and even adding his signature sarcastic twist. I mean, if I had that kind of talent, I'd be smiling too. While I'm sitting on the bench after Clark just torched us. The studio erupted in laughter, and that's where Barkley shines. He knows how to roast players while keeping the tone light enough for the audience to enjoy. It's a delicate balance, and few can pull it off like him. Still beneath the humor, there was a serious message. Barkley was challenging Wilson. He was essentially telling her to step up her game and match the intensity and brilliance Clark displayed. It was as if Barkley was saying, "You're good, but you're not great yet. And if you want to be remembered like Clark will be after this night, you got to do more." Barkley has always been a firm believer in the idea that talent isn't enough. It's what you do with that talent when the pressure's on that counts. The implications of Barkley's comments are fascinating because they touch on the broader conversation happening in basketball, both in the NBA and WNBA. It's no longer just about stats or wins. Players are being judged on how they perform in the biggest moments, how they handle adversity, and how they respond to challenges. For Wilson, this critique from Barkley could be a defining moment. How she bounces back, how she responds on the court, will tell the next chapter of her story. Barkley's words might sting now, but there's no doubt that they'll be replaying in her head the next time she steps on the court. Of course, not everyone agreed with Barkley. There were those who felt he was being too harsh, that he was overlooking Wilson's accomplishments in favor of hyping up the new star on the block. But that's what Barkley does. He creates conversation, sparks debate, and keeps the game interesting. His words might feel like an attack to some, but to others, it's a wake-up call. And if you know anything about Charles Barkley, you know he doesn't back down from his stakes. A'ja Wilson, no stranger to pressure, found herself at the center of this basketball whirlwind. While Barkley's critique might have been tough, it was also a reminder that the sport doesn't slow down for anyone. Wilson's response will be crucial, not only in silencing critics, but in showing that she has what it takes to be the kind of player Barkley respects. A player who performs in the clutch, takes command, and leaves no doubt. Charles Barkley's words hung in the air like a challenge waiting to be answered. A'ja Wilson was at a crossroads, and the basketball world was watching, thanks to Barkley's unfiltered comments. It wasn't just about Barkley wanting to stir the pot or grab attention. This was his way of pushing a player he believed had more to offer. That's the thing about Barkley. Beneath all the sarcasm and committed jabs, there's an understanding of greatness that comes from his own experience on the court. When he sees someone not living up to their potential, he's not afraid to say it, even if it comes across as blunt. Wilson's career up to that point had been stellar by most standards. A WNBA MVP, champion, and dominant force, she was a player many looked up to. But for Barkley, that wasn't enough. He wasn't interested in what Wilson had done. He wanted to see what she could do when the stakes were highest, when the pressure was on, and when someone like Caitlin Clark stepped into the spotlight and stole the show. For Barkley, that's where legends are made. His critique wasn't about diminishing Wilson's accomplishments, but about pushing her to take the next step. It was a reminder that in sports, and especially in basketball, there's always another level to reach. You can be the best player on the court most nights, but what really matters is how you perform in those defining moments. Barkley wasn't saying Wilson wasn't talented. He was saying that her talent wasn't enough by itself. She had to own the moment, much like Clark had done in her legendary performance. And if Barkley was right about anything, it was that the truly great ones thrive when the spotlight is brightest. What made Barkley's comments sting wasn't just the critique, but the comparison to Clark. Caitlin Clark's performance was the kind that transcends the game. It wasn't just another great night on the court. It was the kind of showing that people remember for years, the kind of performance that defines a career. Barkley, being the astute analyst he is, knew that comparing Wilson to Clark would amplify the point. It wasn't just that Wilson didn't play well enough. It was that Clark had overshadowed her in every possible way. But as brutal as the comparison was, it also came with a sense of respect for Wilson's potential. Barkley doesn't go after players who don't matter. He wasn't critiquing Wilson just for the sake of it. His words carried weight because in his eyes, Wilson had the ability to do more. He was pushing her not to be good, but to be great. And for a player like Wilson, who already carried the burden of being one of the faces of the WNBA, that message was clear. The expectations are high, and anything less than dominance wouldn't cut it. In bigger picture, moments like this, where legends like Barkley speak out, are what makes sports so compelling. It's not just about the game itself, but about the stories that unfold off the court. Barkley's critique of Wilson, set against the backdrop of Clark's triumph, is one of those moments. It's a clash of old-school toughness versus new-school talent, with both generations watching to see how it plays out. Barkley has long been a voice for the basketball community, and his words carry weight. Whether you agree with him or not, his message to Wilson was clear. It's time to step up, or someone else will. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.